Hello, everyone, and welcome to this mid-race edition of the Wing It F1 podcast. Just two of us again today, myself, Freddie Coates, and I'm joined with Mr. Nigel Chew. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing pretty good, yeah. I'm doing all right considering there's no F1 for once this weekend, but lots of other stuff going on, as we like mentioned. So, yeah, I'm pretty good.
No Adam Dickinson again. He's still on his staycation, which is fun, I guess. Nice for some. So we're not going to dwell on that too much because we're envious. Anyway, so we're going to go straight into it and go straight into the fallout from last week's Spanish Grand Prix. And there's a hell of an influx of topics that have suddenly popped up this week. I mean, you'd think it'd be a slow news week, but it's not really been when you look into it. And I think something we didn't brush on really at the in our review podcast for Spain was Charles Leclerc's incident and sort of what happened after that, which was that he got started again and he did a couple of laps before he came into the pits because his seatbelts were undone. And he was then, way far back, so they didn't carry on. But that seems a pretty major breach of any regulation.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, nothing has been said or how he's got away with it, I have no idea. Because imagine if the engine cut out again and he's not got a seatbelt, he's going to get thrown forward. And that could have really hurt himself, or if something else broke on the car, or say if his engine cut out and then the car hits him, whatever, then it could have been serious consequences. So it's pretty stupid from Leclerc, I think, because he did 2 laps, didn't he? Not just one. I think he did 2. I have no idea why.
Well, yeah, where he parked up, I thought he was beached actually, but he wasn't. He could have gone straight into the pits anyway from there. They have fancy bollard rules, which people have fallen foul of in the past there, but he was fine to go straight into the pits. But obviously Ferrari thought just do a sighter. So he did that. And then rather sheepishly sort of then admitted, I think, to having undone his seatbelts. I don't think he told the team initially, and they assumed he had left his seatbelts on when he tried the engine. And I had no idea that he was ready. He had sort of given up. But he had, I think.
Yeah,
and then,
personally, I think he should have been given a penalty. I'd even go as far as a grid penalty or something. At least some license points and a massive fine. Because it's so silly. I don't know. I just find it bizarre, really.
Ferrari get off lightly with these kind of things. They got a fine for an unsafe release in Hockenheim, I think, last year as well, which is pretty scraping the barrel for politeness to Ferrari. I think you're right. You'd expect there to be a very harsh penalty. And I don't know whether it has been internally referred to the stewards of Spa, which is a possibility, but you'd have thought there have been at least a press release about that.
Yeah, it will just get brushed over, as many things do in F1, I think, and everyone will forget by the weekend. So, why nothing was said, I really don't know. And I think on the fast lap he did a 1:24 or something. That's really quick with no seatbelts. The fastest lap of the race was a 1. I don't know what the fastest lap of the race was, but 1:24 is still pretty quick. It's faster than F2.
Yeah, you'd rather he drive properly though. Keep the car working at least. You don't want the tyres to suddenly snap off. At least sometimes that can really happen if you're going a bit more tentatively or a bit half speed, especially on old tyres. But I think that's clutching at straws in defence.
The things I hate about this is that the FIA will only do something once something really bad has happened. They need to clamp down on it now when we've had these warning signs. We've seen it, before with drivers speeding past yellow flags and tractors by the side and no safety car, whatever, stuff like that. And then, unfortunately, we do see the consequences one day. So if they really need to clamp down on this sort of thing, just so that in the future, another driver decides, oh, well, Leclerc did it, so I'm going to do another couple laps with loose or unfastened seatbelts, whatever. And then, something happens. It could be horrible. So they need to clamp down on it now. They probably won't, which is very silly. And yeah, it's just there's so much wrong with it, really.
It's not really something you'd say that there needs to be a clamp down on, though. It's
Yeah.
common sense, and for a series, I mean, I'm surprised there's not been more from Jean Todt, because he's so influential with road safety, and they're so well, I don't want to say forward thinking, but so they prioritize road safety at the front of all of these campaigns. I don't know if it still does, but on a lot of the cars, it just says FIA action for road safety on bits of the car. I think it did in the past, at least on some of them. And that's like, this is just complete flagrant disregard of that.
Yeah. I think just to put into perspective, anyone who's drove a car, if you're doing 30 miles an hour without a seatbelt and you have an incident, you can get injured. I know F1 cars are much safer than normal road cars, but imagine doing 180, 6 times the speed. It's just, I don't even want to think about it, really. It's just awful.
The front of a Halo is much worse than an airbag.
Yeah.
But speaking of clamping down, there was also another incident in practice for the Spanish Grand Prix, free practice 3, towards the end. Pretty much it did close off the session, was Esteban Ocon coming up behind Kevin Magnussen after having let him go past, and then he stopped, sort of slowed in front of him, and then Ocon didn't notice that, and then had to overcorrect into the wall. And do we think there needs to be something like a minimum lap speed, even on a cool down lap, just to make sure that cars are going fast enough that this kind of thing wouldn't happen? Because this was just a case of cars tripping up over each other, one going really slowly, one going medium speed, and one coming up behind on a fast lap.
Yeah, I think with that case, it's nothing really to do with the minimum speed needed. I think it was just a bit of a weird incident where, like I said, the Williams was coming up behind and Magnussen saw it, so he slowed up. But I don't think Ocon did see it. Well, maybe Ocon did see it, so he had to get out of the way.
I don't think he expected Magnussen to slow so much.
Yeah.
He was looking in his mirrors, not in front of him, and then Magnussen just came up right in front of him. They're both on the same offline line, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And he was looking in his mirror, just the right thing to do. But it was like he was just looking at his phone or something.
I think for that one it was Ocon's fault, but I'm not sure if that incident itself has anything to do with minimum speed. Because if there's a car coming up behind you fast, you're going to get out of the way anyway, I would suggest.
Good point.
I think, we've seen, not just at Spain, but at Silverstone as well, everyone crawling round, and I think you're right, something should be done with a minimum. No, it should be maximum lap time, shouldn't it? Not minimum. We should think about it. Right. Yeah, maximum lap time. Yeah, minimum speed,
no. Maximum lap time. Yeah. Shouldn't have a I don't know. Like 120% lap time.
Yes. Yeah, I think that kind of rule, especially with high speed circuits coming up, Spa, Monza, Mugello, I think some rule should come into force before, again, some kind of nasty incident happens. I mean, we saw in Baku, I think 2018, with the 2 Toro Rossos, I think it was Brendan Hartley, Pierre Gasly. One of them was, I think it was Gasly who was going really slow, and then Hartley comes, might be the way around, Hartley comes behind him and nearly launched into him. So we don't really want to be seeing that kind of thing.
Particularly that corner is one of the ones in Baku, which is really fast coming into it. Heavy braking. No runoff whatsoever. If you're going to have a crash there, pretty terrifying, I think.
Yeah.
So, there's more to be done on that. That's at least getting discussed quite a lot in various media circles, I think. So that's at least where attention can be picked up from for that kind of thing. So something can be done. At least it's got not just got the attention of the Twitter sphere. It's got the attention of the paddock for that.
The only thing I would say with that is that I wouldn't do it for the whole lap, because you might get drivers going really fast through sector 1 and 2, but then they might just slow up even more in the
Okay,
final
that's
sector.
a
So
good
you're
point.
just you're moving the problem to one part of the circuit, which is just as bad. So I think for me, if I was the FIA, I would have 110 or 120% for each sector. And they've even got mini sectors that can do that as well. But
There
yeah, I
are
think they just have to be careful that they don't move the problem from the whole track to one part of the track.
there are various complications though, which is like blue flags come into it as well. And it's like, is there a force majeure rule that comes into it? That would just make a lot of work for stewards at the end of the day when they say on paper you got this rule wrong, but we're going to enact this. Then it would be knowing the bureaucracy of this kind of situation. They would have to then issue a statement saying it's actually this bit was fine, this bit was fine, this bit was fine at 1519, at 1522, at 1536, this 1554. All of these little details were fine. A bit like how they got to then, if a car doesn't set a lap time in qualifying, they've got to say it's set representative pace in a practice session, so it should be fine. It's all that touch of bureaucracy, which would become a bit hefty after a bit, and I think it would anyway sort of go under the radar and get quietly shuffled away after a year or two anyway, though. That kind of thing.
I've got a question. Why do we only see this in F1? Because in other racing series, you don't really see drivers crawling around this slow, really. I find it... Is it the tyres?
I think it's really the tyres. It's the tyres just require such weird operation, such weird... They're so malleable with their operating temperatures and their pressures and so on, that they're really hard tyres for racing cars, and that they need to be so that they don't degrade uncontrollably because of how they've been made. And like, that's a bit... they have to be really managed by the teams in such a way that they need to take no energy out of them unless they're on the flying lap. And even on the flying lap, they've got to manage the tyres.
Yeah. And we haven't... This is a thing that's only happened in the last 3 or 4 years. I think back to Bridgestone days, or even the early Pirelli days when they had really hard tyre degradation. I don't recall drivers crawling around this slowly, so it's really weird how the tyres work with the pressures and that kind of thing.
I think the 3-tyre compound rule has sort of helped that, in that there is a bigger gap between the hardest and softest tyre. And we did see it at some 2018 events when they had still had hypersoft and ultra soft and stuff. You'd have ultra soft and then you'd skip the super soft and go straight to the soft and medium or something. And that became an even bigger sort of difference. And I quite like that. That was quite fun for a race.
I like it as well.
But it's quite old school to have a quali tyre. But it does just, it's not, the only quick answer is to sort of mediate the lap times, frankly.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, it will be interesting to see if they actually do it.
Yeah, and another bit of news that has been announced recently is a piece of news that has really sort of been very positive and been very well received by the F1 community, and that is the announcement of a new ownership for Williams.
Woohoo!
Yeah, we have financial advisors have announced that they have sold the company to Doralton Capital, which is a how would you put it? It's a
investment, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's capital investment. It is
capital investment that's from the United States of America, which was not that accent. So yeah, what do you think of all of that? Pretty positive. They've got sold. They only announced they're up for sale 2 or 3 months ago, so not bad.
I think it is positive, but me, the only thing I will question is, it's a capital investment company. It's a bit unusual for that type of company to invest in an F1 team, and I'd hope that this Doralton Capital, whatever. Yeah, I hope that they're not in it for the short term. So say they invest lots of money, and then if Williams don't move up the grid, they'll just pull out after 2 or 3 years, and then Williams will end up with a worse deal or something. So it's good that Williams have got investment. Hopefully, it'll push them up the grid. But if it doesn't, I do fear that this company might do a quick sell in 2 or 3 years' time. That's my only worry, I would say. And then, Williams could be in deep trouble if that happens.
There are 2 points that I would sort of raise to that, and that is what the chairman of the company did say in the press release, which was, we're delighted to have invested in Williams and we're extremely excited, da-da-da. We believe we are the ideal partner for the company due to our flexible and patient investment style, which will allow the team to focus on its objective of returning to the front of the grid. We look forward to working with the team in carrying out a detailed review of the business to determine in which areas new investments should be directed. We also recognise the world-class facilities at Grove and confirm there are no plans to relocate. So what they say there is that they're committed to sort of turning around the business. It doesn't say that they'll stay there for ages once they've turned it around and maybe even made it. It is just an investment opportunity. It's buying something. It's like property. It's buying a bit of land that you can then do up, make it good, and sell on for more. And that's what they're looking to do. So they bought it. They're going to put their all into it to make it perfect, get it to the front of the grid, or make it a viable purchasing opportunity in Formula One, and then sell it. But they are still, the commitment is there, and the commitment is also backed up by the fact that they have announced this just as the Concord Agreement has been announced as well. So that's a 5-year commitment still from Doralton Capital that they will be very well aware of, because this is the kind of thing that they would specialise in. Covenants with managing boards and so on. Yeah,
I think if I was Williams, I would have gone down the. This might be a bit bored. But I would have gone down the B team route, like try and be a Mercedes or Renault B team, like what Haas to do. I think that would have worked a lot better.
Probably would have done, but they're very obviously not for that. I think I think lots of teams have their pride, and lots of them are B teams purely because they're B teams by convenience. And I think Williams will only be a B team by convenience if this goes even worse. Even Sauber, Alfa Romeo now is, you look at it as sort of a prime B team, but I mean, it still did its own operations and so on. But before they became Alfa Romeo, they were signing with Honda. They were jettisoning their gearbox deals as well, I think, with whoever they had those with because of that. I think they might have got a gearbox deal with McLaren. I'm not sure. Some weird thing like that was all then going to end up having to be done in-house in a team that was sort of really low on money. So that was obviously the pride of that was still there, and the pride is still there with Haas, who sort of, you see a lot of things from Gene Haas about how he wants to be in it to compete, and currently the best way for him to compete is with a BT model. But I think at the end of the day, if they could sort of do their own operation, I think they would. So,
what you mean, Haas? You mean?
Yeah. I think if it was financially viable for them to sort of make their own.
I think with the current state of F1, I don't think it's possible to do it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the current state of F1, and that's
why I just fear with Williams that they'll never get back towards the front unless F1 changes massively. I think this investment is good short term, and by short term I mean next 2 or 3 years. But then after that, I'm not sure. I'm not as optimistic as some people.
The change by F1 to sort of move away a bit from a B team structure, I think, is what they're bringing in with 2022, which is the sliding scale of development. So if you finish 10th in the Constructors' Championship, you get the most wind tunnel time, development time, that kind of thing. Whereas if you finish first, you get the least. To sort of, and with budget caps as well, that's to keep a sort of accordion style closure on the grid in terms of development. And if a team like Williams is getting investment from a private investment company, then they'll be aiming to then get a sort of, based on a prediction of getting the best or second best development, to then sort of catapult themselves further up. That's the sort of goal, I think, with a sort of investment here, and that will then sort of inspire a bit more. Like, I think it would inspire more individual working from teams, or maybe
Possibly.
you could also argue that it would say that teams would then work even closer together to maximise wind tunnel time, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and as we'll talk about, Ferraris still get a load of money just for being Ferrari. I think Mercedes must have negotiated something better financially for them because they were not willing to sign it. And then Red Bull have got AlphaTauri, so the three big teams have still got a lot of
sway.
Well, money, I guess. So for Williams, it'll be interesting to see if they'll still need pay drivers and that kind of thing. Will they go out for all out performance? Will Claire Williams remain as team principal? So I think we'll find out though, won't we?
We will. I think it will be a sort of long-term plan. Obviously, it'll be a bit like I think when Liberty came in and Bernie Ecclestone was still around for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Well, about a year, and then the Ross Brawn, Sean Bratches, Chase Carey triumvirate took control.
Three wise men.
Yeah, we don't even have Sean Bratches anymore. But yeah, it will be something like that, and it'll be a long-term plan, and we won't really see any rewards for the troubles until a couple of years down the line. But yeah, that's fantastic news, and I think we're all happy that there's a security for Williams. Williams has got a soft spot in every Formula One fan's heart. For Frank, for Sir Patrick, all of them who are involved in the background of the team, involved in the currently still the third most successful in terms of wins, second most successful in terms of constructors championships and drivers championships teams in Formula One. So brilliant.
It's the end of an era somewhat, but I think Williams is just such a historic team, and like I said, everyone loves them. I mean, look at the drivers they've had: Mansell, Hill, Senna, of course, only for a couple of races, Prost, and even more in the 21st century, Montoya, one of the fastest.
Ralph Schumacher,
drivers.
Nico Rosberg, Massa, Bottas,
George Russell,
Sergei Sorokin. You're right, George Russell though, he's mega. I mean, if you want anything to say, if you want a way of proving that Williams is committed to fighting at the front, it was not keeping Sorokin and Kubica in a lineup. It was saying, you know what, Russell is mega. We want him. We're hiring him. We don't care. And this year, we're going to keep him. We're going to block anything that Toto Wolff's going to say. He's our boy. He's on a 3-year contract and he's doing it. Williams, that secures Williams' fight for me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And yeah, it would be, I mean, this is for another conversation, but with 2022, they're probably going to lose Russell unless Williams somehow build an incredible car in the off-season or something. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see who they bring in and stuff like that. But yeah, it's good that, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic and all the uncertainty, they now have that certainty to stay on the grid for at least a short term, hopefully the long term as well. But yeah, it's F1. Williams is so important to F1. They've been around for 40 years, something like that, 50, 40 years.
Well, Frank Williams has been around for about 50 odd years in the sport, but Williams as an entity, this one has been around 41, 42 years.
Yeah. So they're an integral part of Formula One, and it's really good to see them still on the grid, and hopefully they can be on the grid in the long term as well.
Completely, I completely agree with that. Another thing that could be returning to Formula One, we've had lots of tracks come in this year. We've had Imola's come back, Nürburgring's come back. We've got Mugello popping up out of nowhere, and Algarve, Portimao, whatever you want to call it, pedant or not, that's popped in too, and that looks set to be pretty decent. But another one that has raised a few eyebrows in terms of expectation is the rumours that Istanbul Park, the Turkish Grand Prix, could be returning to the Formula One calendar.
Yes. How
Good.
exciting. Well, 15th of November is the date that people are talking about. Good news? I don't know if I should let my political intelligence stop me, but Turkey hosting a full-on race, I'm one of them who's a bit, I don't really like that. But if you ignore that, the track itself, I still think
Ignore Bahrain.
it's great. Eh?
Ignore Bahrain too, then.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm not going to talk about that. But yeah, if it was me, I wouldn't race in Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, China, and Russia. But yeah,
I don't think many people would disagree.
But yeah, at the track itself will be really interesting because we haven't raced there for years, and in fact, there hasn't been much racing at all there. I think the last international event there would have been possibly the World Rallycross in 2014 or 2015. I can't quite
Did they have some
remember.
touring cars? Or some TCR there? I'm not sure.
Not that I know of. I don't think they did. I don't think World Touring Cars have, I'm pretty sure.
Fair enough. Yeah, so it would be Rallycross then. Surely.
The track, I think, was only used for like club stuff and national stuff. So, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what's happened. I would have thought they would have had to redo some of the track and that kind of thing, modern it up. But it turns out not, because if, F1 are going to go there, then the track must be in good condition still. Yeah. I mean, it's a driver's and fan favourite, really, with the famous Turn 8. And with these cars, the downforce, how much downforce they're producing, well, it couldn't even be flat out all the way through those left-handers, which would be insane. And, yeah, I think there's a few people who are worried about overtaking, but Turkey does have a very long back straight, so I think overtaking will be no problem.
Very long back straight. Very long back straight with then a hairpin, then a chicane that sort of opens up to the car who's just been overtaken to then come back into a very tight turn one sort of right angle turn on. Quite a typical Tilke design that to sort of have it come back on itself, but it keeps racing all the way from sort of midway through the lap to the back to the start of the lap, which is very good. And we've seen it there in the past. The sort of 6 or 7 Grand Prix that were there really thrived on that. You had the McLarens dicing for the lead. You had the Red Bulls doing it too until they took each other out. In the 2010 race, which was a brilliant race. Really tense race. But I think, talking about Turn 8, I think it will be an easy flat, Turn 8.
Yeah.
But I think the first sector will be what really then opens up, because those have been sort of half throttle corners, a bit of it. Some of them have been sort of lots of engine braking. I think that will open itself up into quite a difficult section in these high downforce cars.
And it's so wide as well, the whole track. So that sector one, we could see that could become an overtaking to us. If you think about Silverstone, turns 3 and 4, if you take more speed into turn 3, you can go down the inside of turn 4. I reckon we could see some of that in the first sector because it is so wide. If you carry a bit more speed,
or a bit like
down the inside or something.
Turn 1 and 2 at Kota, you can get a bit of a switchback down there as well. If you're lucky, and that it's so wide, you can get so many different racing lines through there that people can take different speeds through different corners, but then come out in a similar lap time. I think it's going to be. I think it's one that's sort of shot right up to the top of excitement for the majority of Formula One fans.
Definitely, I think. Out of all of the returning tracks, Turkey's the one I'm looking forward to the most. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I really think it's probably the best Tilke track. I don't know if that's fair to say. Maybe Malaysia. Malaysia's Tilke. Yeah,
Malaysia's Tilke. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those 2 tracks are probably the 2 best Tilke tracks, I'd say.
Yeah, I do like Kota, and I was a little bit partial to the track in India as well, the Bursa International Circuit.
That was a weird one, wasn't it? It got really tight, like in the middle, and they had that bank tight.
I thought it was okay.
I thought it was alright. Yeah.
I think it could have had a lot more going for it, like all Tilke tracks. But yeah, this one, Kota, Malaysia, they're definitely you can see the traits that work.
Yeah.
But this isn't a chain bear video, so we're not gonna delve into that.
Shout out.
Yeah, he needs it.
Yeah.
Um,
It does. It looks like F1 is not going to go to Asia now. There was talk of Vietnam and Malaysia having back-to-back races, that kind of thing. But with Turkey, it's not been confirmed yet, but it looks likely to happen on the 15th of November. I think we can expect F1 to go straight to Abu Dhabi and Bahrain. It's just a question of whether they have 2 races in Bahrain. Will they use the outer layout? Will they race in the day for one race or the night for one race? I hope that happens. If they don't have the what people call the oval, I hope they at least have different conditions or something.
Yeah, those aren't. Middle East isn't really a place you can rely on weather fronts to shake it up so much, like we potentially can in, I don't know, the Nürburgring in October. But yeah, I think what I've seen is, yeah, they're going to do Turkey, then Bahrain, then an Abu Dhabi traditional finale, as they've been citing it. There was some discussions about Jerez.
Yes.
I think that would be fantastic. I really like that track from a historical standpoint. But I haven't seen anything recently. It seems to have fallen through a bit.
I'm not a fan of Jerez, I'll be honest. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I can't really overtake. I mean, the longest straight is not even that long, is it? It's like it's a bit like having Budapest without the long home
The water
straight.
park.
Yeah. But yeah, if they do go though, I think for me it's always nice to have new tracks or returning tracks that F1 hasn't been to for years, just because it creates a different challenge and, you know, having a challenge with the teams and the drivers. So even if they do go to Jerez, that would be nice. But I'd say I'm more excited about Turkey and Nürburgring and Mugello.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, that's the obligatory calendar talk that's still going on into the end of August.
Yeah, we'll find out in the next couple of weeks, because I think they have to say 8 weeks before the date, the scheduled date. So we should find out by the very latest, the middle of September, after these next 3 races at the very latest.
One thing I'll put to you, Nigel Chu, is how much do you think this year's eclectic calendar will be carried over into future seasons?
That's an interest. Well, next year it'll be really interesting what they do with next year's calendar. You know, the draft, because really you should have a provisional calendar by now. Is that normal? They usually release it in September-ish, don't they? A provisional.
Usually, September.
Yeah. So I think what they will do is they will have a similar calendar to what we was meant to have this year, but then they'll have a almost backup calendar. So if we go with the draft calendar that they have, I don't see too many of the returning or new races staying on, to be honest. But I mean, with 17 or 18 races this season, I think Liberty will go, oh, we can do 25 races, because look, we've fitted 17 in the space of 4 or 5 months, which is ridiculous, quite frankly. So, you know, 25 races is now looking like it's possible. It probably won't happen this year, but out of the new and returning tracks,
won't happen this year.
Yeah, this year, the new and returning tracks that are coming this year, I think only possibly 2 or 3 will stay. I reckon Imola and the Nürburgring are the most likely, but that's just complete guesswork. Well, what do you think?
I'd have thought Portimao would have been one that would be likely to stay. There seems to be less of a fight in Portugal with other tracks, whereas Imola's obviously got the Monza conundrum. Nürburgring and Hockenheim have their sort of dual year contract. It seems to be 2021 would be an on year for Hockenheim anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's just meaning that Nürburgring and Hock would be able to take up its side of the bargain that's been going on for the 10 years or so, which Nürburgring haven't been able to do, and do Nürburgring 1 year, Hockenheim the other.
That's what I'd like to see. Like they
I'd
used
like
to
to
have.
see that. Yeah. We don't seem to go out for race more than one race in a country anymore. Really, there was unless there's a country who's just got a massive fandom, like the height of Alonso with Valencia and Barcelona, or the height of Schumacher with Hockenheim and Nürburgring, with the banner of European Grand Prix on both of them. We haven't really got that anymore, unless we, I don't know, piggybacked off Hamilton and came to, I don't know, Donington. But I think you're right with Nürburgring and Imola's just kind of flagship a bit for F1 still.
Thinking about it now, if I'm not sure if any of the returning races, any of the new or returning races this year will be on the calendar. I'm not sure.
Maybe not immediately. But because they've got contracts to uphold with to fulfill with like Mexico and China and Vietnam, places like that are going to need to be re-slotted in, because these places have been brought in to obviously replace them and take up the mantle with worldwide races. You've got what, Japan, Melbourne, China, Singapore, Mexico, Brazil, Kota, Canada, Vietnam,
Brazil. Oh, you said Brazil.
Yeah, all of those. That's just completely. That's Mugello, Imola, Nürburgring, Portimao, Turkey, Silverstone 2, Austria 2. That's it. Then we're back to a normal calendar. So that kind of thing leads me to believe that F1 feels a bit safer if, say, the contract with Paul Ricard isn't renewed, say, and then they can go to Portimao instead, that kind of thing. F1's a few more backup tracks to go and negotiate deals with. They'll have had either a bargaining chip for each side with the track then, saying, we hosted this and we did really well. We came in at your hour of need, Formula One, and we were really nice to you. Give us a Grand Prix.
Yeah, that's what Spain was saying, because I think, there wasn't going to be a Spanish Grand Prix next year. Of course, Alonso's returning now, but Spain wanted to have a race this year, to show, hey, we stepped in, then, to guarantee a place for next year. And I think that's what the Barcelona, did.
And Barcelona's one I can take or leave, frankly.
Same.
A risk of going down that rabbit hole again. We have a few more things to discuss in this podcast, and I think we're going to focus on the Finnish driver, Valtteri Bottas.
Oh.
To I think round off this sort of midweek medley.
Yeah.
Do you think he
No.
Sorry.
What do you want to know? I said sorry.
Oh, well, he said at the end of in the press conference after Barcelona, he was very dour. He was very upset, basically, within himself. A few people likened it to sort of late 2018 Bottas, where he was at sort of the lowest of his career, I'd say. And he's a lot of the quotes seem to have said that he is feeling like this championship is slipping away already. And I think it's very early in the season to think that, but Hamilton's got such a hold. What do you think Bottas what do you think his mindset's going to be going into the rest of the year?
He can definitely stick it on pole position in most races. He's shown he's got the speed and stuff like that. As we said before, it's just a race pace. That's where his downfall is compared to Hamilton. That's for his mindset. He's going to be looking to win every race. People are saying, he needs to be more like Rosberg and do mind games and stuff like that. But for me, when people say that about the 2016 season, I kind of dismiss it a bit, because I really do think Rosberg wasn't lucky, but he was a bit fortunate, I would say, with what happened, because so much went wrong for Hamilton that year. But Rosberg was able to put. I would say if the same happened, if we had the 2016 season, with Bottas as Hamilton's teammate, I think Bottas would win the championship like Rosberg. I don't think there's too much of a difference between them. So, people say no, Bottas has to be more ruthless. I don't really agree. I think he just has to, maximise everything he can do, whether that's a second or third, and just hope that Hamilton suffers some bad luck, really. That's the only way I can see him winning the championship. All this talk of mind games, I don't really buy into that too much. Maybe you do, Freddie?
I know, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think the mind games was only really sort of considered because Rosberg was just so much more vocal, I think, than Bottas really is as a person, as a character. Bottas is just he's a calm guy, and Rosberg's not really. He's a bit more. He's a bit more flamboyant with how he is. I mean, yeah, he's still got his Finnish streak in him with his dad, obviously, Nico Rosberg and Keke Rosberg. But he's got the flair of someone who's grown up in Monaco that will give him a bit more of that pervasive character that you'd expect from a racing driver at the top level. Whereas Bottas is a lot more chill with it all. He gets his Hakkinen influences, and you can see that a lot. And he does grab the opportunities. So when Hamilton got his grid penalty and got his race ruined in the first race of this year, Bottas soundly won that race. Yeah. And he could have picked up the pace at the end of the race and, helped Hamilton a bit. But, he didn't really. He just sort of, he drove his own race and won it when he needed to. And that was it. And in Silverstone 2, he got pole. That was a big sort of launch for Bottas. In that, for Hamilton, it was similar lap time as last week, but for Bottas, that was a 3 or 4 tenth improvement. So that's very good. And then he was the prime fight with Verstappen for the whole race there, until Verstappen won, until they contra-strategied with Lewis. So I think Bottas is, if he does get into a championship fight, I think you're right. It's more of a championship fight by circumstance. He's there to take it, but it needs to come to him. Whereas Hamilton's going to take it.
Rosberg was better in terms of racecraft. With Hamilton, his racecraft wasn't actually that good, but he was willing to, put it on the line. I don't think. I think
Rosberg's racecraft is given.
It's more aggressive.
It's aggressive, but a lot of people think it's not amazing. And I think that's more Rosberg being more of a Prost than people give him credit for. I think being a I could go for this overtake, but I don't need to. I can get the point. Is the kind of sort of Rosberg I've always sort of seen. And when he needed to go for the move, particularly in Abu Dhabi, he was told this move is race critical. So next lap he did it on Verstappen in his finale. I think if Bottas is told this is race critical, he still has stuck behind Verstappen for the majority of the races this year.
Yeah, I can agree with that. We saw in Silverstone, the first Silverstone race, I think it was, Bottas got a better start than Hamilton, but then completely backed out of it into turn one. I feel Rosberg wouldn't have backed out of it and they would have gone side by side. I think those are the minor differences between them. But to win the championship, I think it does have to be circumstantial. And Bottas, I rate Bottas very highly. I feel many people don't, but we have to remember he's racing against Lewis Hamilton, and he's matching him pretty much in qualifying, and he's not in miles off in the race. Yes, he's not winning, but it's not like he's getting lapped like some other drivers compared to their teammates. Well,
actually, here's a hypothesis. Not hypothesis, hypothetical for you. So the Mercedes is obviously a very driver-friendly car. The Red Bull we've seen is very tetchy, very twitchy, and you're alluding to Albon there. If Bottas was Verstappen's teammate, would he be as close to? Sorry, no.
Yeah, he'd be closer.
If Bottas and Hamilton were in the Red Bull, would Bottas be qualifying like he is in the Mercedes in comparison to Hamilton? Or do you think Bottas would not get on top of it as well as Hamilton would, and would be similar to sort of Verstappen's gap to his teammates, that kind of thing? What do you think with that? That's a really mishmash question, but
I get you. If Bottas and Hamilton were at Red Bull, what would it get? I think it'd be similar. You know, I think
that's very highly rating for Bottas. Then I think it'd be. I think
the talk of the Red Bull being unstable and stuff like that. If it was more stable, you know, Verstappen would be quicker himself. You know, Verstappen wouldn't stand still, and you know, Albon would be better, but so would Verstappen. So, it's tough. It's tough, but I do think Bottas would still be very close to Hamilton. That's my say on that.
No, that's fair enough. It's just we all dream of a title fight like we had in 2016 with Rosberg, albeit as we've said, relatively circumstantial, but still, he put himself there, and it went down to the final lap of the race in Abu Dhabi, and that was insane. I really enjoyed that. So, and Rosberg did still keep the pressure on. He was still winning races up until when he needed to. So, I think even if people can say Hamilton got his engine failure in Malaysia from the lead, a race Rosberg was punted into at the start by Vettel and fought his way back up to what would have been fourth, but was third because of Hamilton's retirement. I think in the races to come, Rosberg, I think, would have put up a fight that was entirely different to the fight that was put up in the races that did transpire. But anyway,
I don't want to get into a 2016 debate.
Yeah, I know.
So much went wrong for Hamilton. From memory, qualified, I think he had started back in Germany and Hungary. The start in Monza, the start in Japan, he got awful starts. So Rosberg, everything went for Rosberg. I think he got a 5-second time penalty in Germany or something. That's the only bad thing that really happened.
Yeah, it was double rebel podium after that. Yeah. We don't need to go into a 2016 season review. But no, I mean, I think both of us would do quite happily. It was a very decent season.
It was, yeah.
Especially for a team that won 19 out of 21 races, to give us such an interesting season, I think says a lot about the Rosberg-Hamilton era. So yeah, that sort of wraps it up on the F1 for this week's little app. We've got obviously Indy 500 coming up tomorrow as the day we record this. You'll probably have listened to this after the Indy 500, most of you fans. But yeah, Nigel, what do you think is going to happen in the Indy 500?
Oh, that's like asking me what's going to happen. What are the lottery numbers going to be?
Can Simon Pagenaud win from 25th?
Well, he won from last in one of the oval races a few weeks ago at Iowa. Yeah. So, and it's just the Indy 500. It's about staying out of trouble and making sure you get to the end in a good position, really. It's not like F1 where you have to be at the front all the time. So
that was one from pole last year.
Yeah, true. But it was after an epic fight with Alexander Rossi.
That's true.
So, there's going to be some luck involved with safety car timing and strategy and that kind of thing. But it should be a good race. I think the Honda engines are looking better or stronger than the Chevrolet engines if you look at the starting order. So whether that will be an advantage, but you can't rule out Penske with Joseph Newgarden and Pagenaud and Will Power. So I expect them to come through the field. But I mean, Andretti getting pole, that is a surprise because I think he's last in the standings if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think he's last. So it just shows what a turnaround, and it was literally came out of nowhere. But yeah, it's going to be an exciting race. That's for sure. And yeah, I think for me, it's the biggest. I think it's bigger than Le Mans. Personally, I think it's the biggest motorsport race in the world now. But that's
I can only really go on how hyped I get, and I get more hyped for Le Mans than I do for Indy 500.
Yeah.
But I'm equally for both races. I'm still very hyped. So. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm very happy for Andretti to get pole, and I'm kind of rooting for him. I don't think anyone's not rooting for him because he's an Andretti. And and that's just, you know, the mystique with the Andretti name is fantastic. I don't need to go into the Andretti curse, but that. But I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be exciting because you've got Scott Dixon right there though, and you've got
championship leader
Scott Dixon. Yeah, who else is on the front row?
Front row, we've got Sato as third, I think, and second. I can't remember, Freddie. I'm gonna have to look.
It's Andretti, Dixon, Sato. Then
that's the top three.
Rossi's ninth.
We've got Rinus VK and Alex Palou got into the top nine. They're both rookies.
I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, very.
I like Rinus VK. I think he's a very good little driver. And he's only like 19 or something. So
yeah, and Palou as well. He used to race in F2, I think, a few years ago. He didn't do that well, but it's good to see that he's transitioned into.
He was
really well.
He was third in Super Formula last year.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
So that's one he's done well in. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough of Nigel and I just randomly chatting about motorsport.
Just quickly, how well do you think Alonso's going to do, or not well?
I reckon he'll keep his nose out of trouble and finish the race, and that's it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the fact
he's never won an Indy 500, so never won, never finished, never finished. Of course, he's never won one.
The thing for me is that he's slower than his two rookie teammates to the Indy 500, Pato O'Ward and Oliver Askew. And that for me is not a good sign at all. At least for next year when he returns to F1, has he actually lost the speed? I thought he wouldn't, but to be behind those two, who are both rookies to the Indy 500, is not a great sign. But yeah, I agree. I think he'll stay out of trouble. Although he was the only driver to crash in practice, so yeah,
Dixon did a little spin.
We didn't think that. Well,
it wasn't a wreck. Anyway, we're getting really.
Alonso's not going to win.
Okay, we're getting into a very deep conversation here, and we need to get out of it quick. So we're going to wrap up the podcast now, and we are going to tell you where you can find us. I think it's going to be Nigel's turn this week. Where can we be found, Nigel?
I'm not sure. Is it so? YouTube, obviously.
Yeah.
At the Wingate F1 podcast. Our Twitter is at Wingate F1. Acast is our podcast provider, and we are also available on iTunes and iTunes and what else? I can't remember. Spotify. There we go. Yeah. So I think that's everything, and that is where you can find us.
Yes, there we go. Cunningly put by Nigel to help you figure it out for yourselves. We are also working on Google Podcasts. The podcast does go there, but it goes there very late for some reason. So if you want to listen to it on an Android, listen to it in like 2 days after it's released. But yeah, that's all we can really say. Today, I think, Nigel, any final words?
Yes. No.
And on that note, goodbye, everybody. Have a good time. Take care.